Hello and welcome to Finding Your North Star, the HGKC podcast series, where we talk to business people about their experiences and their challenges of building innovative businesses. I am Kim Jones, and I'm delighted to welcome John Rees, whose entrepreneurial spirit led him in 2013 to be a co-founder and subsequent COO of Reach Robotics, the team behind the Mechamon gaming robot. Today we are in a reflective mood and taking the long view of startup, scaling, and running a business. Welcome, John.
Morning, Kim. Thanks for having me.
Well, we've known each other for quite a long time, since, well, early in 2013, when you set up a bold startup, Entrelancer, prior to your involvement with Reach Robotics. Your strong independent approach started long before then. So tell us a little bit about yourself and where your journey started.
Okay, yeah, so my background is in engineering, actually. So I'm from Yorkshire. You can probably tell from my accent, or you will do quite quickly. Went to University of Leeds and qualified as a mechanical engineer there. And then from there, I went 17 years really in engineering, and that was a mixture of engineering consultancy, engineering management within mostly aerospace and automotive industries, but a little bit of defense as well. And then, as you said, Kim, it was actually around the time my children were born and married with 2 children that my entrepreneurial spirit started to come to the fore. So that was, in the first place, a business called Entrelancer, which was a 2-sided marketplace, allowing startups to be matched with freelancers, and we facilitated a risk and revenue sharing framework. So the premise there was startups need to build their minimum viable products, but they need help to do that, and they don't have money to bring the help in to do that. So why not engage the freelancers in a risk and reward sharing framework to do that. Did that for around a year whilst also doing a full-time job, actually, consultancy still, engineering consultancy at the time. And unfortunately didn't get a real product market fit with that business. I wasn't getting the traction that I wanted.
It was very innovative at its time though, wasn't it? I mean, it was kind of one of those movements. There was a big movement towards looking at different ways, the gig economy. There was a lot changing in the environment, and trying to find the right business model match with, what's happening as a movement in time.
That's right. At that time, we're going back probably 7 or 8 years. The gig economy was starting to become really popular. There were lots of crowdfunding platforms popping up as well. So that's where individuals are, mostly equity crowdfunded. So individuals are donating or pledging funds to startups to allow them to start getting their business together. So it was sort of an amalgamation of those 2 things, sort of cutting out the middleman that is the money, I suppose, in this case. But yeah, difficult trying to find the market and get the fit. And when it came down to it with that business, it was looking like it was going to be a low volume, low value business, which is not a good thing, I suppose. So around the same time, I was getting involved with Reach Robotics, and that was just really in my spare time and evenings and weekends type thing. Mostly helping out on some mechanical engineering, trying to get the first prototype together. So that was where I met Silas at a local entrepreneurs event. We live in Bristol. Quite a lot going on locally, especially at that time, the local entrepreneurs network. Silas was still at university. He had an idea for what would be the world's first gaming robot. So that business was originating out of his idea that came from helping out in schools and working with school children to try to engage them in STEM subjects, and the finding that when you put something physical in front of them, and you try to gamify the whole process, the levels of engagement increase really quite rapidly. So the business was sort of founded on those principles, and I joined around 6 years ago now, 6.5 years ago now, as a co-founder, alongside Christopher Beck, who was the CTO, and Chris was coming from a background of working on a PhD in the robotics lab, Bristol Robotics Lab, which is where him and Silas met, actually. Great place for innovation and incubation of very early stage businesses. Yeah, so from there we started off with just a founding team. We eventually hired our first employee, and that was around the same time that we got accepted into a business school, business accelerator called Techstars, which is in San Diego. And along with that came a little bit of money, not quite enough to pay the bills, but enough for us to quit the day job and commit full time, jump in there both feet. So that was it. We were off to San Diego for a really intense 5 months business accelerator there. It's kind of like CEO school, really. All of the contacts that you might need to be able to raise your seed investment round, and the environment for rapidly developing what's called a minimum viable product in the startup world, which is your first version of the product that will help you raise the
what was that intensity like then? You're working very hard really in the short term there as well around getting that MVP done. It's not really the long-term thing. So was it changing a lot?
It was
time.
Yeah, it was intense. I mean, for us, we're a hardware business, so our development cycles are longer than what you would have for a software business. But it was a really intense period where we were working 7 days a week, sometimes until midnight. Well, most days until midnight. I would say 9 o'clock in the morning till midnight at night. The only exception was Sunday, where we'd race to try and get to the beach for about 7 o'clock, only to find we'd missed the sunset and it was actually freezing cold now. But we attempted it every single week at least.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? You were in this amazing place and you don't have any opportunity to capitalize on being in the fantastic environment because you're all working so hard. Yeah,
I mean, certainly not the external environment, but we were definitely capitalizing on the entrepreneurial environment that we were in as part of that business accelerator. I think Techstars is probably number 2 in the world, business accelerator, maybe behind Y Combinator. So it's a great opportunity, and we were determined to make the most of it, I suppose.
And a lot of those early experiences and those networks and those contacts have really stood you in good stead through that sort of 6-year journey.
Yeah, Techstars' motto is Techstars for life. So even now, this morning, in fact, I received an email from one of the network, and looks like I might be able to help out a little bit there. It's give first is what they stand for. If you help other people out, then soon enough, when you need some help, they'll be there for you. So it seems to work. And the investors that we met early on through that network, they stayed with the business and helped us grow the business. So it's great.
So we're in a bit of a reflective mood today. One of the things I thought would be a really good opportunity is to get you to kind of look back, over this experience, because it's been 6-7 years, and think about, some of those goals that you had at the beginning about being more entrepreneurial, stepping beyond the engineering limits of working in a big firm. So, what's been some of those guiding principles that have really motivated you? Yeah, so
when I think about the company strategy and the vision of the company, so to me, the company strategy is just the means of implementing the company vision. And it's like the company vision with a timeline applied to it. And then my personal vision, or the personal vision of all of the owners and co-founders of the business should be as aligned as possible if you're co-founders, but also the company vision really should exist at the overlap between those personal visions. So to me, the company vision is the company's the conduit to meet the needs of the owners of the business. And at an early stage in a small business, that is the only shareholders in the business are the founders. So so really, if the company vision and where you want to take the vision isn't aligned with your own personal vision, then you probably need to get out and realize that it's not the right vehicle for you. So to me, a lot of it is all about vision, and you know, quite going through quite a formal process of setting that, and then start with a personal vision of the people, start with then off the back of that the company vision, and the company strategy should fall out at the back end of that. And then at the start, it's quite simple, I suppose. That you've got very few employees. You're in direct contact with everyone in the business. But at Reach, we were, just to give you an idea of the scale, we were at the peak 60 employees. We were distributing internationally, Europe, US, a little bit in the Middle East, and obviously the UK, through multiple retailers like Apple and Amazon. So we were becoming a larger business. We're still a small business, but and more globally distributed, I would say. We had a challenge there to make sure that the vision was cascaded down, and everybody understood that within the organisation.
There's a lot of complexity there, isn't there, in terms of functions and different roles, and it's a lot. Even in 60 people, you've got a few people for a lot of different functions, a lot of different tasks.
Yeah,
to hold together.
That's right. And you know, there were probably a couple of distinct phases where we had to put in a concerted effort to make sure that we did everything we could to keep everyone closely aligned on that company vision and the goals of the business. And I mean, I remember one time, probably the first time we had a challenge with that was when we started to outgrow our managed service office space. So we were in probably a 10-man managed service office, but as we started to grow, we were still not big enough really to take on our own premises, but we had to grow into a separate office, and then we had to go into another office. So we become a little bit split over 3 different offices, and the culture started to become fragmented at that point. So it takes a little bit of extra effort, and it takes empowerment of the kind of senior people that you're bringing into the team, and trusting them to stay the course really with that vision.
Yeah.
So, I think mentoring is probably a big part of it as well. If you know, for me, for the founders of the business, let's say, I think it's important that they're using an external mentor, somebody who's been through what you're going through, and perhaps ideally has achieved where you want to be. And you know, say when you're setting your vision of 3 years, you want to hit certain targets. If you can find somebody that's already done that, they can help you smooth the bumps in the road. And
I think it's those critical insights, you know, and that's what makes really good entrepreneurs are the ones that can take the external advice, synthesize it, and use it for themselves. You know, you're not wanting to replicate it, but you want to learn from it, you know, make it your own, take stuff from it. And, you know, the advisory role, you know, whether it's coming from non-execs or whether it's just coming from informal mentors or even formal mentoring with experienced people, they can really give you the confidence and some skills and resources to take the next step.
Yeah, it's I suppose it's about diversity of thought, really, and the more opinions you can seek, the better. As long as they're, you know, qualified opinions. you probably, if you got 3 or 4 mentors or advisors, you probably get 3 or 4 quite different views as well.
Yeah.
So the skill is being able to navigate through that and take what you need out of it, I suppose. See what the friends are.
That's one of the, I think, the key attributes of the successful entrepreneur, as to the people that just managers rather than leaders. You know, people who don't have that ability to take it in, make it their own. You know, use their own core and what their own motivation and drivers are. So you talked a bit there about, you know, how it grew at Reach. So, you know, how did your role change over that time? Must have been quite interesting.
Yeah, well, quite drastically, I would say. So, over the 6-year life of Reach Robotics, I alluded to it earlier, where when I first got involved, it was mostly on the engineering side, and that was extremely hands-on, literally building prototypes in my garage. And then, as you know, as time moved on and the business, we started to, for us, we were a hardware business, so as we started to get closer to mass production of our product, let's say, the role became quite operational. So I was looking after manufacturing, quality control, project management, some of the later stage engineering activities, logistics, distribution, supply chain, all of those sorts of, I suppose you would imagine them as being typical operational activities for a hardware business. All of that stuff in the middle phase of the business really came to the fore. Before that, everybody's focused on product development and, you know, getting the next prototype out to support the next investor meeting, or a little bit of, you know, progress that you need to show each time you go back to see the same investor. So once we were, you know, secured financially in terms of our venture capital investments, the role switched to that more operational role. And then as then we started to look at product number 2 and scaling the business internationally, the role then became more strategic. Yeah, the business was growing, the people coming into the business were growing, and I was able to spend a bit more time, not all of my time, but a bit more time looking at more externally, I would say, externally focused, and looking at partnerships that we should be forming, who in the supply chain to be forming strategic partnerships with, and really trusting the guys that I brought in to run those teams for the separate areas I just mentioned, to run them with support from myself.
I mean, that's the real challenge, isn't it? When you put in people, you've got to make sure that they can continue to perform, because you've got to start focusing now on those external partnership relationships, and you've got to make sure the internal team are still able to make decisions, you know, be consistent, be professional, and keep on it. So, you know, have you got some tips on some of those experiences that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all about people. That I think the culture that I mentioned earlier, I think needs to be maintained, and that's a bit of a challenge, but something that's a constant challenge. Hiring people that are better than you, I think, is always very important. So, you know, in each of those areas that I talked about, or my responsibility, I sought to hire somebody that was better than me in each of those individual areas. That was my sort of number 1 hiring criteria, I would say there. And then, you know, the interview process is not perfect, so you need a bit of luck there as well. I think that you've hired the right people, and in a startup environment, there's nowhere to hide, so you do find out fairly quickly. And if that's the case, yeah, then you have to deal with it quite quickly. But I think the biggest part for me is empowering the staff. Find the right staff, empowering them to do their job. Put your trust in them, and support where needed. Yeah, and then regular touch points. Make sure that the vision of the business and the business strategy is well communicated down to all levels, really. keep everyone pointed in the same direction.
Well, that's really useful. You've talked a little bit through this conversation about some of the lean startup approaches. You just kind of come to the fail fast there and talked about MVP. So how did this play out with some of the work that you did at Reach? Because I know it's kind of one of the things that we've talked about in the past about this, these fairly lean startups.
Yeah. So lean startup is I suppose Steve Blank was one of the godfathers of that. Eric Ries made it popular through his book. And when it was originated, I suppose they were thinking about software businesses primarily, a lot of SaaS businesses, and the model fits really, really well to that sort of business. So when you're talking about hardware, consumer hardware, the model has to be adapted. You can't just adopt it, carte blanche, it won't work. So some of the principles will apply, some of them won't. One of the ones that definitely does apply is the overall principle of try to get to market fast and test your ideas, your business ideas and product ideas actually with your end users, your end customers. The notion of sitting in a silo, going through your product development and then launching it into the world and saying, ta-da, there it is, come and buy it, people. It's a recipe for failure, I'm afraid. So that overall guiding principle still remains true. The problem is that the development cycles of hardware are much longer, with large capital investment required at various stages for things like tooling, whatever that happens to be. For us, it was injection mold tooling, which can be kind of $500,000 of investment. So it's significant. But what you can do in terms of the design, build, test, rapid design, build, test methodology that's kind of also quite core to lean startup method is using rapid prototyping methods. Lots of places in China now can prototype your PCBs within 1 to 2 days, get them shipped over in another 2 or 3 days, and you can have a PCB with you in less than a week. It's actually a lot faster than trying to get it done in the UK in a lot of times, and a damn sight cheaper usually.
It's kind of interesting what's happening now, isn't it? In our COVID times, watching, ventilators and all the sort of equipment and sanitizers being, rapidly developed in all different kinds of environments and consortia. Things that we're really not used to doing.
Yes, and actually that's an example of some of the challenges with hardware is that, and say for the medical devices space, it's a very highly regulated environment. So you can't cut corners like that typically. So any piece of hardware needs to go through a certification process, which isn't the same for software. But yeah, it is interesting to see everybody mobilizing and trying to, I suppose, leverage that rapid prototyping capability that exists now. It's a lot more commonplace now than it was even 10 years ago. So that allows you to get, especially in the early stages when you're trying to really just raise the investment to take it to the next phase. It allows you to get something out quickly that's a prototype. It might not be fully functional, but it's enough to demonstrate to an investor that you have made good progress and that you can run fast and you're along the right lines. Might be just enough to convince them to invest. And the traditional approach of you're in research, then you're in product development, then you're in manufacturing, and then you're in sales. It doesn't really work in a venture capital backed business, because if you were to follow that approach, you wouldn't be able to raise the investment that you need to get you that far. So you have to sort of compromise on what you know is an optimal development approach, or if you're a project manager, you sort of pull your hair out of this sometimes, but it's what the business needs, to be able to show progress to the investors. So yeah, and some of those rapid prototyping methods really help with that. Testing new markets with low volume production runs or even prototypes is something we were always trying to strive for at Reach. So we were in the process of we were about to test some new markets with accessories for our robot, and rather than us invest in the tooling to be able to injection mold these parts, we were trying to take an approach of letting the community know that these are actually going to be, rapid prototype parts. Be totally honest with them about these coming to you. They're customized for you, so giving them the benefits of this rapid prototyping methods. But they may not look as polished as what a product would normally be. But we're involving them in the development process, and we're just being quite open about it. That was an experiment that we were going to run actually at Reach Robotics. So, and I think having that sort of thinking or that sort of mindset, if you can try and bring that to any area of new business where you're trying to expand into, that's great. And then just one last point on that is, as the business grew and the product started to become more mature, and we were, it was looking like the Mechamon product line would be a stable product line within Reach Robotics. I was trying to build a separate department within Reach Robotics. We call it a special ops team, a bit like Black Ops, they're sort of under the radar stuff. But really, what the remit was for that team was to always still be behaving like a startup. So let me explain what I mean by that. As the Mechamon product, which was our first product in the market, and started to expand the product line and it becomes a stable part of the business, then the way that we would measure that part of the business would be more like a more mature business. What do the financial figures look like? What's the defect rate on the production line, or all of that sort of stuff that large companies would be measuring. But the real growth in the business may not come from that product line. It may come from something completely different. And that was the remit of the special ops team, was to always be acting like a startup and always be trying to test new markets and new products, or new products in existing markets, and test them in this minimum viable product approach of get to market fast, as cheaply as possible and as quickly as possible, and test it. If it looks like it's good, great, let's scale up in that area, and we'll put it, effectively move it into the other side of the business to scale it.
Which is really important, isn't it? Is keeping that sort of external customer sort of market view all of the time and letting it inform what you do, rather than letting a bunch of techies drive the product development by inventing things which are based on the product and what they think the customer needs, rather than actually making those stakeholders part of the development process of what we do next.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose it's why I'm keen that I don't like to see pure R&D departments that are working in isolation. Really, I prefer an innovation department. And the distinction for me is that it does involve an element of testing it in the market, and there's a lot of customer-facing side going on there, and you're developing it alongside the end user or the end customer. That was the approach we were taking as we started to shift our offering into the education market. Actually, running pilot schemes with schools, bringing teachers in and involving them with the development process.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that sort of scaling up. It would be nice to now look back, I think, over your experiences today, sort of now on the other side of it, what's been some of your key learnings, and perhaps how do you think they'll influence your choices of the future?
Yeah, okay, sure. So to finish the story of Reach Robotics, I suppose we unfortunately wasn't able to raise our Series B investment, which was led to the business going into administration last September, September 2019. And so when I reflect back on that, there's a saying in startups and within venture capital that hardware is hard. It's quite a well-known saying. Everyone accepts that the amount of money needed and the time taken to market is that much more difficult with hardware. But also, if you happen to be a consumer product like we were with Reach Robotics, then that means it means you've got, for us at least, Q4 sales. It's not the same with all consumer hardware products, but our sales were heavily centered around the Christmas sales period. So those two things combined mean, there's a large cash requirement, so capital investment requirement, and there's also a protracted cash flow position. So our cash flow cycles would be sort of 12 months from investing in inventory to getting paid by our end customers sometimes. So so the learning, if you like, that I take from that is that actually don't start with an idea for a great product or an idea for a great business. Actually start with what's a good market to be in. Where's the investment going into? Obviously it has to be an area that interests you and matches your skill set, but look at the markets really, and then look for a problem and a solution to the problem. So it's kind of flip it on its head really. The product in the end will be the thing that differentiates from everybody else. But I think the ideas come easy actually. The ideas are not the hard bit. The execution's the hard bit.
Well, I always have a saying that ideas are free, ideas are cheap, but it's what happens next that matters the most.
Absolutely.
Can you turn that idea into even the next step? Can you actually get support first of all from other people, to make sense of it? So, that idea funnel, very few come at the end as executable ideas, actionable ideas, and it's kind of how do we get more of those?
Yeah, I agree with that. And actually, when we started to look at new product lines within which the actual idea generation process is something that is very difficult very difficult to make a process out of, I would say. A lot of ideas come to people in the shower or, walking the dog or something. If you try and do it in a formal environment, it's really, really tricky. And there are some methods to help with it, but I would love to come up with a formula for that. If I had a formula for that, we'd all be laughing, I think. So that's one of the learnings is start with the industry and the sector that you want to be in, and the type of business. Do you want to be hardware? Do you want to be software? What does the investment landscape look like for those things? And then for me personally, I think the journey has taught me that, coming from an engineering background, I've always known that I'm a builder at heart. I like building things. But what Reach Robotics has taught me is that I actually like building businesses more than I like building products or things. And it's that excites me now. So when it comes to things in the future, I'm always looking to leverage that knowledge that I've gained from Reach Robotics, and it doesn't. I wouldn't say it doesn't matter what type of business it's in. It still needs to excite me. It needs to still be engineering or technology focused to kind of get me up and out of bed in the morning. But the thing that's really exciting is growing the business for me.
So you're talking about that then. You just joined a new business. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So amid very challenging times with COVID-19, So I just joined Novel Engineering Consultancy Business. It's a business based in Bristol in the UK. We are fairly small engineering, but extremely niche and very specialised engineering consultancy business. Mainly focused on aerospace business at the moment, but also defence, and my role there is head of new technology. So my role there is to look at the capabilities within the business and grow the business into initially at least adjacent markets, and really any markets that would that the skill set and the capability of the business would apply well to. So I have a fairly free remit. The important thing for the owners of the business is that we don't lose sight of the value proposition that we bring, which is this very high niche, safety critical, highly complex systems engineering design knowledge. So it's a case of looking at what markets that expertise aligns with best, really.
Well, that sounds a perfect opportunity to bring together all the things that matter to you then. You know, it has the technology, it has lots of opportunity. You know,
yeah,
it's about a passionate sort of area that you're interested in terms of scaling a business, and also great people, I should think, to work with. You know, it's not too big a firm, but there's lots of opportunity there in terms of energy, enthusiasm, and skills.
Yeah, and the people there are great, and they've managed to, in what, an engineering services business, which is challenging, I would say, in terms of a company culture, because sometimes people are based on client sites. They actually have offices in Japan as well. So they've actually done a great job to this point in building the company culture and making everyone feel part of that company. And part of my job will be to try and maintain that as the company scales. And the two owners have great growth plans for the business, and I'm just excited to be part of it, really, and helping them push the business forward.
That's great news about your new role. I think it'll just be an absolute start, and I'm looking forward to recording a follow-up episode for our listeners. So, John, thank you so much for sharing your reflections on your startup life to date and on scaling a business and all you're learning from that. And best of luck for the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kim. Nice talking to you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.